Good day, good night. Welcome to Betting on Sports Podcast. I'm Kevin Laramee. I'm your host, sports statistician, radio and TV presenter, joining you today to preview the divisional round in the NFL. It's our National Football League playoff divisional round betting preview. That is a mouthful, but we will look at every single matchup today, from Bengals and Titans to the 49ers and the Packers, all the way to the Rams and Buccaneers, looking at the Bills and the Chiefs. I have my equations, the data is in, the results are clear. We will have a surprising result. More on that later. Where to put your money this weekend? Where is the value? Where is an opportunity? Welcome to Betting on Sports Podcast. Today we will compare the quarterbacks, the kickers, the special team, the defenses, and even the offensive line. All that together, accompanied by a few other aspects that I will keep for myself for now, will give you a result. We went 3-3 last week in our first show here on Betting on Sports Podcast, and we hope you enjoyed the show. And today we will continue. We will look at those four games, the matchup, the betting lines, updated betting lines as of mid-afternoon Friday. The lines have moved a bit earlier on this week, but they have been stable over the last few hours. And we will break down all the lines from the over, well, the total points basically, to the team total, money line, the spread. We will look at all these numbers for matchups. So let's start by looking at matchup number one on Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific. It is the Bengals versus the Tennessee Titans. The Titans are favored by 3.5 points on the spread. Money line 153 for the Titans, 259 for the Bengals. We have a total at 47.5 with value, I guess, on the over. You're paying some juice for the over, meaning it's less odds, but there's a bit of a higher probability that the over cashes. So you do pay that with the odds given by your bookmaker. Team total for 21.5 to Cincinnati, and for Tennessee, it's a 25.5 situation. Now, when I analyze this matchup and I look at the difference between Cincinnati and Tennessee, of course, easy to say, oh, will Derrick Henry play? Well, that's the big question. And on Friday, he was activated. If you are listening to the show right now, he is expected to be activated on Friday. I should precise if it's not happening since you are watching this show. We are expected to see Derrick Henry have a return. He hasn't played since week 8, which means it's been a few months. Just last week, he wasn't able to cut left or right, which is why he wasn't activated for the game. That was a couple days before the game last week. Well, Tennessee wasn't playing, but meaning he wasn't activated prior because he wasn't ready for. So it is expected that Derrick Henry will be back, but at what condition? At what price? And will he be on a short leash? Meaning, will he have a set number of play he plays, a set number of rush? Because we do believe long-term this could be dangerous. You don't want to aggravate an injury. So for Tennessee, do you put him under maybe 15, 20 count play? And then, is it really worth it to put the guy who's not in form? That's a whole question to handicap playoff teams in the matchup between Cincinnati and Tennessee. But according to the numbers and the data in the analytical world, running the ball in itself, the running back position in itself, is not as influential to the final score as you would think. It is as a whole, but it's driven more than just the running back itself. We've seen Tennessee has surprising result in the back end of the season, winning even, having no Derrick Henry, playing with their backups, playing with alternate running backs, and sharing the load. And I think that's what we're going to expect. So the presence of Derrick Henry in this game between Cincinnati and Tennessee is not that important, meaning it won't decide the winner of this one because it will be a shared load. If you do have a prop on Derrick Henry and his amount of yard or rush, Go with the under. That's what I would do. But let's start our comparison for the quarterbacks between Cincinnati and between Tennessee. Here is, by the way, all the 8 quarterback included in the round. Of course, my ranking is done with the statistic that you see on the screen if you're watching us by video, which if you're just watching us, if you're just listening to us via podcast, thank you. And you can find the video version of Betting on Sports Podcast on our YouTube page, available at youtube.com/sports podcasting network. 8 quarterbacks are left in the playoffs in the NFL. And here is my ranking. Going with the completion percentage, yards, touchdown, interception, rating with DVOA, the ranking that is proprietary to the Football Outsiders, included in a few other data points that I like to include in my equation. This is the ranking that I have. It is heavily influenced too with the rating, and it's similar ranking, meaning usually my ranking is very close to the passer rating ranking because it's a similar way to calculate the performance of the quarterback. So we have 8 quarterback here. The best in the round is Aaron Rodgers, and the worst is Ryan Tannehill. And when I put all those players together, I have a ranking and I have a point system. Most amount of points for the top quarterback, and Ryan Tannehill with only 1 being the worst in the round, statistically speaking and analytically speaking. Which means there's a big disparity. Joe Burrow is second. So, according to my calculations, this is a big advantage for Cincinnati. Which, you start to get the picture here. Now we'll move on to the kickers, because that is the second most important aspect of a team. Yes, your quarterback is important, and even running back and wide receivers. You're going to hear me not talk about wide receivers. Well, you're not going to hear me talk about wide receivers. That's what I mean. Because it doesn't matter who it is. At the end of the day, the point counts at 7 points, regardless who puts it in. But it goes through the hands of the quarterback. Statistically speaking, mathematically speaking, over my research this year, the position that is most influential to points is not even the quarterback, it's the kickers. And then it's the quarterback. So we talked about the quarterbacks. Now let's look at the kickers, because you'll be surprised. Yes, Hollywood is number 1, Magay of LA. But let's just focus on our matchup for now, which is Cincinnati, Evan McPherson, against Tennessee and Randy Bullock. Numbers are similar. We're talking about 84.8% field goal accuracy or field goal percentage done by Evan McPherson of Cincinnati. And we're looking at an 83.3% for 83.9 for Ryan Bullock. Longest field goal this year from McPherson was 58, and Bullock was 51. Where it's interesting is 50 plus, 9 out of 11 attempts for Evan McPherson, which is not bad. Bullock, he's not really trusted enough to try from 50 plus yard, being only 1-1. That is also with the new philosophy of going for it on 4th down midfield that Vrabel has used a few times this year. One of the candidates as coach of the year, Mike Vrabel of Tennessee Titans. He has been able to do well with a lot of injury this year, and that is the case. But when we go back to the kickers for 1 second, because to me it's important to note that McPherson, extra point percentage, 95.8, and we're looking at a 93.3% completion rate for Randy Bullock in extra point, which might not seem a lot, but that's a bit over 2% difference. 2% over 1,000 simulations, over 1,000 times this game being played. 2% will be costing the game maybe 3-4 times for Tennessee against Cincinnati. Which brings me to my next point. Special teams. Special teams are really important in the playoff because they can dictate field position if it's a kick return or punt return, which is included in this special team ranking. But it's also the amount of point you can generate, if any, with your special teams and how much you perform over expected performance with your special team. Meaning the highest you are in the DVOA ranking for the special teams, the more influential you are for your team to win the game. when we look at this ranking here, Cincinnati is third. In this ranking, they're eighth in the league, but they're third out of the 8 teams left. And Tennessee is 22nd in the league. They're in the last third percentile of the NFL in the quality of their special teams and how they perform. That could be the difference here. That could be a touchdown. That could be a couple field goals. And we just talked that Cincinnati has a very small advantage, but it has an advantage in the kicker department. So right there, you're kind of starting to see a trend here. We've talked about the special team. Now, one of the most important aspects, it's a defense. And that's maybe where Tennessee can get an advantage. We see Tennessee is 12th, the best defense in the league. Cincinnati is 19th. There's quite a difference here. Even though they're just behind each other, Tennessee and Cincinnati, in my ranking of the 8 teams that are left, Tennessee has a significantly better ranking in the DVOA available on footballoutsiders.com than Cincinnati. Including that with the amount of points conceded this year, with health also, Tennessee has a significant advantage here, which makes it even closer. That's where, when we look at my final prediction here, this might influence it differently. Because we will see Cincinnati and Tennessee being closer than my equation indicate, but there's still value there, and we'll talk about that value in 1 second. The last aspect of my equation is the offensive line. To me, it's an important aspect of the league because we see how it can protect the quarterback, and the better your offensive line is, combined with your quarterback, those two metrics together give you a good indication of the performance output of that team offensively, in my mind. Here are your best offensive line in the playoffs that are remaining. We see that Tennessee is 16th in the league, but 8th in our ranking. Cincinnati is 15th in the league, 7th in our ranking. They're mid-tier NFL level offensive line. Barely playoff caliber. They're the last 2 remaining here in the rankings. So we see where this is important. And to add to the importance of an offensive line in Major League in the NFL, look at the offensive line that are left. They're all top 20 offensive line in the league that are left in the playoffs. You cannot win in the NFL without a very good offensive line. And that's what we're seeing. That's what the numbers are indicating. So that is heavily weighted in the rankings and in my final predictions, which, as we just saw, there is a slight advantage to Cincinnati, but barely. Both are not great. So moving forward, whichever team wins this one, whoever wins this matchup between Cincinnati and Tennessee will be disadvantaged in the next round. Just on that aspect of the team, their offensive line is not the most reliable. Which comes to the end. We have now the result. After all my tally and my ranking, I add up all the 5 different aspects of the game, in my opinion, which gives me a score. Cincinnati 22, Tennessee 13. No, that's not the final score, but that's my prorated way of evaluating the strength of each. Cincinnati would be favored here in my mind. So when we look at the betting line, because it's that time now, let's look at the betting line once again. Cincinnati 3.5 points. I would take that. I would take Cincinnati in the points. I would also take the team total because of the bad offensive line of Tennessee. Bad in context here. So that's what I would do. I would take the Bengals and the points and Tennessee. Now, how much do you believe in Derrick Henry and how he can influence the game if he plays a short amount of downs? Earlier this year, when he played between week 1 and 8, Derrick Henry had 32 missed tackles. So 32 times he got away from a tackle. To be able to get away from a tackle, you need to be fit. And you need to be able to move left to right, side to side, and not just front to back. And if he wasn't able to cut left to right last week, how much of it can he do this week? And how much of that aspect of his game can nullify his advantage against his opponent? I would go under with Derrick Henry, and I would not believe the hype that this will influence the result of the game. Tennessee has the worst quarterback in the playoffs remaining. They have a good defense, but not the best left. The O-line is struggling. They have the worst O-line in the playoffs left. Cincinnati, Joe Burrow or hot. We saw what they did last week, and yes, there's controversy and all, and we can talk a long time about that touchdown and the whistle and the inadvertent whistle, but it is interesting to see how much of an influence Cincinnati's advantage at the position of quarterback will have on the final score. And to me, it's Cincinnati and the points. All right, it's time to move now to the 49ers and the Packers in the second game that will take place on Saturday at 8:15 p.m. Eastern, wherever you find your favorite game. A little bit of country here for our man, Aaron Rodgers, who's statistically speaking the best quarterback left in the round. We can see his numbers here for Aaron Rodgers. He's the best quarterback in my ranking left. 68.9% completion. 4,115 yards this year. 37 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. 111.9 is rating. Joe Burrow is second as we talked. And Aaron Rodgers' opponent, Jimmy Garoppolo, has injury problem. A shoulder knock, maybe a thumb injury. Will he be able to take advantage in this matchup? Garoppolo is a mid-tier quarterback in my ranking for this round. 68.3 completion rate, which is similar to Aaron Rodgers, but about 300 yards left. 20 TDs, 12 interceptions. That ratio is high. It's a very high ratio. It's the highest ratio after Ryan Tannehill. And that could be the difference. The Packers have a good defense. Second worst maybe left in the playoff, but to me, they have a good defense. And if we look at the betting line, the Packers are favored by 5. Almost a touchdown, but not quite, which is a 5.5 is a great number. If you believe in the Packers, get 5.5, because even if Mason Crosby shanks an extra point, you would still win. And that is a key number for Packers fan, 5.5. Mason Crosby is not a good kicker. He's the worst in the playoffs. So if you believe in the Packers, the spread at 5.5 makes a whole lot of sense. But we'll see how they can maybe find a way to nullify the kicking advantage, because Robbie Gould is not necessarily the best either. So we've talked about the quarterback. Let's look at the numbers of the kickers we were talking about. Robbie Gould, 87% field goal rate. His longest this year is 52 for Robbie Gould of San Francisco. 50 plus yard, he's 3 out of 4. And he has an extra point percentage of 97.5, which is pretty good. Those are good numbers for the extra point, because depending on the amount of touchdown that San Francisco would do, that could come into play. So then we look at Mason Crosby. 73.5 in the field goal department in the percentage. That's the worst in the playoffs by far, by almost 10%. Mason Crosby is the most unreliable kicker, especially if it's cold. Also, there's that aspect. He has the worst conditions to play in of the entire league. So 1/3 of his game are played in conditions that he's not favorable in to kick the ball. The wind, the weather, and the elements basically plays against Mason Crosby. And the stats reflect that. His longest kick this year is 54 yards for Mason Crosby. He's 3 out of 4 for 50-plus yard, and he has a 96.1 extra point percentage, which is very similar to Robbie Gould, 1.4% difference. So it's virtually identical here. So there's not a lot of advantage, but San Francisco on the field goal department has a higher percentage, which means if you find a prop of one missed field goal, take it. Because I can see Mason Crosby missing one. I can also see that it comes down to that amount of points, which means if you think it's going to be a field goal difference here, oh wait, you have the O-line, and the O-line might give you an indication too of the forces at play. That's where maybe Green Bay gets the advantage. Green Bay has the best O-line in the playoffs. Third best O-line in the league. But San Francisco will need to rely heavily on Deebo Samuel. And will Green Bay find a way to nullify Samuel? The fact that Jimmy Garoppolo has an injury to his thumb and shoulder and might not be 100%, we might over-rely on the running aspect of Deebo Samuel, and that will be interesting to keep an eye on. If you find a prop of a rushing touchdown for Deebo Samuel, I would gladly take it. This is a valuable prop, depending on the value and the odds that you have, but it's probably going to be a 2-for-1. He is a very high likelihood of going to score a touchdown. If San Francisco goes into a red zone situation, I can see a running play outside the tackle, so a bootleg, swing, or you could say a sweep, or even maybe a pitch out that could be given to Deebo Samuel that would count as a rushing touchdown. I can see that happening. I can also see him scoring on a very short pass. The thing is, Deebo Samuel, every time he receives a pass, he has a 10-yard after the catch average, which means it's almost a first down every time Deebo Samuel touched the ball. Regardless of the outcome of this game, if you believe that San Francisco will win, then definitely jump on that prop. If not, even think about it. The over in the yards, receiving yard for Deebo Samuel, or even rushing yard could be worth taking here. Which leads us to my final predictions between San Francisco and Green Bay. I do believe there is a lot of value on taking San Francisco with the points. It might be a gamble, it might be tight, and it will be a sweat. But this, if the weather is an issue, this could come down to a field goal. There is clearly an advantage for San Francisco in the field goal percentage department. San Francisco will hit more field goal than Green Bay if this game is played 1,000,000 times. There might be 700,000 times that this game is won by a field goal, and San Francisco wins a majority of those. So if it's going to be close, you have the 5.5 and you have the advantage of knowing that Robbie Gould is more reliable than Mason Crosby for field goal, which is the main way of scoring points in the NFL. Yes, touchdown are there, but if you look over a long period of time, there's more points scored by field goal than there is by touchdown over a period of time. So, I think there's a very good chance that we have San Francisco covering here, losing by a field goal maybe or less than a touchdown. But that also depends of the injury and the health report of Jimmy Garoppolo. So maybe I would wait. And maybe the line will even move and maybe you'll get the 6. If you get 6 or 6.5, at 6.5 and over, definitely take San Francisco. But then it'll depend of your risk, your love of risk, and how you can live with yourself. If it goes down to a field goal between Mason Crosby and Robbie Gould, if it's a field goal race, there's going to be a very squeaky bum time type of situation. And hopefully your sweat is not too bad. But if I had to really, because it's not the game I'm most confident in, I would definitely go heavy on, but maybe some pizza money on San Francisco and the points. That's what I would do, at least for now. We'll take a short break. When we come back right here on Betting on Sports Podcast, we will break down Rams and the Bucks and the Bills and the Chiefs, and we will look at where the value could be for your futures for the Super Bowl winner for this year. Right now might be the time. It might be the last time before the actual Super Bowl where you can find value in choosing your future. Right now, we'll take a short break, and we'll be back on Betting on Sports Podcast. And we're back on Betting on Sports Podcast. I'm Kevin Laramee, your host. And you can follow me on Twitter at Kev Laramee. You can follow this show through my Twitter feed. You can email us, sportspodcastingnetwork@gmail.com. You can subscribe to our newsletter where we do write our thoughts for every show, where we go a little bit more in details into our predictions and our thought process and the analysis of our equations that we derive our predictions from. And you can find our newsletter at bettingonsports.substack.com. This is the NFL playoffs. This is our divisional round betting preview. And now it's time to talk about the Rams and the Bucks. My best prediction ever as a handicapper, as a sports statistician, was last week predicting the Rams game. My numbers gave me the biggest disparity between the Rams and their opponent last week. And people say it was going to be close, and it was the biggest blowout in the entire weekend. As soon as we saw the first whistle and the first ball being thrown, we knew there was going to be a blowout. And it was, and we predicted it. Our equation that we have come up with, of course, multiple different sources, data points, analysis. Football is the game I know the most. It's the one I played at the highest level. And all my experience and everything mixed together, I have my equation. And we were so right on the LA Rams. And there was value, and that really is where we really made a good job last week. So let's take a look at the numbers for the Rams and the Bucks. The Rams are, let me double check to make sure it's not a mistake. I believe the Rams are favored, so don't trust your screen here. The Rams are minus 3, and the Bucks are +3. Let me just double check, because this could be a mistake. To me, it doesn't make sense. I would take the Rams -3. But while I check my notes for 1 second, when we look at this matchup and my equation, looking at the quarterback, the kickers, the defense, the special teams, and the offensive line, I found value and a big disparity once again. And no, the Buccaneers are favored here. So this is right. Our graphics department did a great job. It's not a mistake. So LA, just jump on LA. Just go on LA right now. We're going to break it down now, but before the line moves too much, jump on LA. Yes, fade Tom Brady. I said it here first. Fade Tom Brady. I'm going to explain more. It's time to fade Tom Brady. Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski, it's not going to be enough for OBJ, for Cooper Kupp, for Cam Akers. That's the key here. It's Cam Akers. I can't believe the Rams are given points. Take them on the money line. Jump on the train with the points. Grab the over and the team total over. LA is coming to Tampa Bay and is ready to destroy the Buccaneers. I truly feel there's an advantage for LA here. And let's go. Let's break it down. Let's take a look at why. Quarterback position. Let's have a great look at the two quarterbacks here. We have Matthew Stafford, and we have Tom Brady. GOAT, Tom Brady, the best ever. The quarterback that since I've been in my teenage years has been the best in the league. And is still putting numbers like ever before. 5,316 yards. A completion percentage of 67.5. Over 67 is elite. Over 68 is very rare. 70 like Joe Burrow is amazing. But this, look at these numbers. It's amazing. To me, when I look at Tom Brady, 43 touchdown, only 12 interceptions, that's a big indication of his potential danger here. But let's not forget Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford, third best quarterback in my ranking. In other rankings, he's the best. 41 touchdowns, 17 interception. It seems high. It's pretty high, the ratio. But to me, there's still a small advantage for LA here. Because when I look at my quarterback comparison, I do also evaluate the weapons, which means the wide receivers and the running backs available right now for him. And I would take LA's running backs and wide receivers right now over the available ones for Tampa Bay. Injuries, releases have decimated the offense of Tampa Bay. They were able to perform last week against the Eagles, but let's face it, the Eagles should have never been a playoff team in a regular season. Not that they're not good, but there were quite a drop-off to the talent gap between those two teams. So when I look at LA and I weigh in OBJ, Cam Akers, Cooper freaking Kupp, well, LA's got an advantage in the quarterback department. And then we move to the kickers. So we look at the kicking department, and I do believe LA has the best kicker in the game right now. Matt Gay for the Ram is arguably the best kicker in the league. 94.1% field goal percentage. That is 5% more almost than the closest one in Harrison Butker. Yes, Matt Gay plays into a dome, and this is outdoors. But if the wind is not an issue, it won't be a problem. And there's a good chance that the weather's going to be all right in Tampa Bay on Sunday. And Matt Gay could be an advantage here for LA. Tampa Bay has a decent kicker, not the greatest one. He's the second worst in our rankings. He has a 83.3% field goal percentage completion rate in Ryan Suckup. 48 is his longest field goal, which could be an issue. He hasn't hit a field goal longer than 48. That is influenced by the amount of time his offense has the ball and how often he needs to kick versus how often other team needs to kick. They rarely lose possession or in a fourth down situation midfield or around the 35-yard line that would see Suckup kicking longer than 48 yards. So that's why he does not have a longer than 48 yards field goal made this year. But I think that's why. It's because the offense is so good. But to me, it becomes hairy when we look at the defenses, because the defenses here, the Rams, might have the best defense in the league. And we'll talk about the O-line. There's injuries in the O-line in Tampa Bay. They have to move it around. Von Miller, Aaron Donald for LA will be dangerous. The Rams have the second best defense left in the playoffs behind the Bills. The Rams have a big advantage there versus Tampa Bay and versus Tom Brady. Tom Brady is not mobile. Tom Brady cannot get away from the pressure. He was sacked over 4 times last week. Tampa Bay could lose this game because LA would sack Tom Brady. And now we talk about ball management, and will Tom Brady be able to hold on to the ball when Aaron Donald, Von Miller, and more, and can Jalen Ramsey nullify Mike Evans? If Jalen Ramsey nullify Mike Evans, this won't even be close. My numbers show me a 1/3 advantage. I have 34-22 is what I have here in my ranking in the number. So it has nothing to do with the score. It's just how I prorate every single thing, and it's an equation. But that tells me there's a big advantage for LA. And you're given points. Take LA with the points, take the over, and take the team total over for LA. That's my bet of the week. LA +3. Team total over for LA. The Rams will continue. The Ram will make it all the way to the Super Bowl. That is what my data is telling me. Even long term, people are afraid of Matthew Stafford's turnover rate. The scoring rate is higher, so they'll get away with it if this is played multiple times. Believe the hype in LA. Hollywood is coming calling. That's where the Super Bowl will be played, and the Rams will be in it. Mark my words. You've heard it here first. And which leads us to the offensive line, as we talked about. And the big advantage is the Rams, because look at the offensive line. Yes, Tampa Bay has a great one, and they're second. But they have injuries. They have one clear injury that he won't be available, at least not mobile. And we'll talk about Fitch. And him, he has a high ankle sprain. A high ankle sprain as an O-line, the one thing that you really can't really play with, because you really use your ankle. You're always crouching and moving, and that's the position I played. And that's true. And he's facing also Von Miller, probably. And the Rams have the third best O-line. Big advantage here because of injuries for LA, which makes my equation even more one-sided on LA. My prediction, grab Los Angeles by the horns and bag the Rams plus the points for Sunday. Which leads us to our last matchup this week, which is the Buffalo Bills against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Buffalo Bills, as of Friday afternoon, are favored by 1.5, and Kansas City minus 1.5. This is going to be the closest matchup in the entire round. I don't know what to do with this one. This one is a conundrum. I would stay away with this one. I would not touch anything in this game. I would not grab the over or the under. The total is way too high. I don't know what to do with it. Even people think it's going to be over that. I don't know. The spread is so low that it doesn't favor Buffalo in my mind. And as much as a lot of people are falling in love with Josh Allen, statistically speaking, being a numbers guy, it's hard to love him. 63.3% completion rate, that's the worst in the playoffs. Yes, he can run, and that's the one aspect of the quarterback position that is not rated in a lot of analytical play. And that's where we get burned. I get it. So Pat Mahomes versus Josh Allen, to me, nullifies that, because they can both do it. They both can get away from their tackles and run outside their own tackles, and run down the field. Josh Allen is the best runner, the best rusher for Buffalo, statistically speaking, this year. And we're seeing this being the case. So to me, it does give a very equal aspect of the game to the both quarterbacks, where both Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes are mobile. They have similar statistics this year. They have a similar completion rate, similar amount of yards. They're only 400 yards different the entire season. 37 touchdowns this year for Pat Mahomes, 36 for Josh Allen. One has 13 interceptions, the other one has 15. The rating is similar too, both below 100. So you're looking at a very similar here, and I don't give the advantage to either. So that gives you an indication of how things are right now, because it's equal for the quarterbacks. So let's take a look at the kickers now, because that could be another place where an advantage is. And here's the kickers. Harrison Butker is the second best kicker left in the playoffs, according to my calculations. And Tyler Bass has a second one. He's great on extra point, but his field goal percentage is not that great, which could cost Buffalo the game. Harrison Butker could win it. And the thing is, with how Arrowhead Pond is built, it's a bit similar to the Buffalo Stadium, where on one side there's a bit of a channel effect and a swirling effect on the wind. So Butker could have an advantage. And if this game is close, it could be a field goal advantage one way or another, and that could be where Kansas City has an advantage. Let's look now at the defense. And the defense is where we see a big advantage for Buffalo. Buffalo has the best defense left in the playoffs, according to my metric. It has the best defense in the league, according to the DVOA rankings also of footballoutsiders.com. And they're playing against Kansas City, which has the worst defense, especially against the run and the quarterback. So Josh Allen could have a lot of fun, and Pat Mahomes could not. That is one aspect that could influence your choice too. I don't know that I would take either side because of that aspect, only because it's only 1.5 the spread, and that does not give me confidence on either. But when we look at the special teams, you might see an advantage here. Because here, the special teams are coming right here. So the special teams, we see Kansas City, they have the best special teams unit in the league. From field position with return of the kick and the punt to making points from scoring touchdowns or field goals, Kansas City has an advantage here. And quite a big advantage because they're the third best in the league, but the best left in the playoffs. The Bills are the 19th in the league. Big disparity here. Kansas City could have advantage. And if I combine that with the O-line, which goes also a little bit on Kansas City's side, there could be advantage on Kansas City. But a lot of people like Buffalo and like what Josh Allen could do. I'm just not confident enough to back Josh Allen. I would take over in his rushing yard, but that's all I would do. I would stay away from this game with all other aspects. I think Buffalo is unpredictable. They've played good when they're not supposed to. They've played bad when they are supposed to. I don't know what to think of the predictability of their offense and how they can fare against a really good defense in Kansas City and a really good special team unit. The defense of Buffalo is good, so I don't know what Pat Mahomes can do against them. They have a couple of great options. Tyreek Hill, will he be back 100%? And will it all be, once again, on the tight end to score? So he does have his swagger back, like he said earlier this year. But it's always interesting to me to see how much of an influence Tyreek Hill will be at the final result of this game and how Pat Mahomes can continue. They're a team that starts heavy and finishes slow in the regular season. So I don't know how they will play against Buffalo, that is a quite pacey offense and can go 6-7 straight possession while scoring. So I would stay away from this game. If you are inclined to play this one, hey, I'm all for it, and I hope the best and good luck with your bet on this one. Before we say goodbye for today, and before I wish you a great playoff weekend in the NFL, I want to look at the futures board. These are the numbers for the Super Bowl winners. Super Bowl 56 will take place this year. Those are Friday afternoon. The Green Bay Packers are your favorites. Kansas City, Buffalo, Tampa Bay, followed by Tennessee, the Rams, San Francisco, and the Bengals. Plus 360 for Green Bay, meaning if you play $100, you're going to win 460. Kansas City Chiefs are plus 400. Buffalo Bills plus 475. Tampa Bay plus 600. We have Tennessee Titans plus 850. The only place where I believe there's value is the Rams. Statistically speaking, my model shows me the Ram in the Super Bowl. I don't know how much you're willing to bet on that, and I kind of would agree. This is a proof of concept. We're looking at that model. Went 3-3 in week 1, and we'll see how we fared this week. But LA is where I think there's value here. If you put $10 on LA tomorrow morning to win the Super Bowl, you'd get back 95. So I do believe there's value in the Rams winning the Super Bowl. And the value is now. Because after this weekend, when they upset Tom Brady in Tampa Bay, then the value will drop because people will look at Stafford in LA and they'll see that not only will they be back at the Super Bowl, but they'll win it and at home. And that's my big prediction so far. The only thing that my model is clear on and define is that LA is the best team so far. I hope that you enjoyed our NFL bidding preview for the divisional round. My name is Kevin Laramee. You can follow me on Twitter at Kev Laramee, and you can follow this show from my Twitter feed. You can find the podcast version on our website, sportspodcastingnetwork.com. You can subscribe to our newsletter. Our newsletter is available with every show about once a week. And with your subscription to our newsletter on Substack, you are not only aware of every publishing of a new podcast, you are also aware of my thoughts, predictions, and more in-depth analysis on my process to come up with my predictions. And we hope you enjoyed this version of the show. And you can find all our podcasts on our podcast feed, which is available everywhere you get your podcast. And as always, you can find podcast version on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you find your favorite podcast. My name is Kev Laramee. I wish you a great weekend in the NFL. And as always, until next time.